So this is the doctrine of the church. I kind of use a similar, I tweaked a little bit, but I use this for the new membership classes. The new membership classes, when we're talking about what does it mean to be a member. So today we're looking at the doctrine of the church, kind of try to understand the Apostles' Creed's statement about the church, holy and Catholic church that also does communion, that is communion of the saints. Trying to understand those things all together. Does everyone have one? Are we? Not enough? Okay, but let's start with the origin of the church. Here I'm trying to understand, individually and now collectively, what is church? Like, what is the church of Christ? The term that you're familiar with, the church in the scriptures, comes from that Greek word, ecclesia, right? Ecclesia has gotten into all kinds of languages that has a past in Latin. Like you've heard the term kirk. Have you heard that term? Sometimes used in German and Scottish, and a kirk, the mother kirk. It comes from ecclesia. Ecclesia basically means called out ones. It comes from the verb kaleo, which means to call, right? Now, it's not a term by itself, this ecclesia. It's actually a term that goes all the way back to the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, if you look at the Greek translation of the Old Testament, remember the Old Testament is written in Hebrew, and there are a couple places where it's Aramaic. So there is a translation of the Old Testament into Greek called Septuagint. In Septuagint, ecclesia, the church, the word church, is the translation of the Old Testament word kahal, which basically means assembly, or the gathered ones. So I want you to just imagine for a second, every time you read the Old Testament, imagine that whenever you see the word assembly, you put the church, right? Wouldn't that change your perspective a little bit as you're reading the Bible? I think it would, because what I'm trying to at least argue here is that the church does not come to the scene in the scriptures in the New Testament, Acts chapter 2. The church of Christ starts, believe it or not, in Genesis 3:15, right? And the beginning of the promise of God that is given, God starts already assembling, gathering, calling out his people. Let's read that passage, Genesis 3:15. You all know this. This is called the proto-evangelium. You heard that? It's the first or the former or the foremost gospel. Good news. It's the first time that it's given, the news, right? Can someone read that for us?
I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, you shall bruise his heel.
Yeah, that's good. So the promise is, there are a couple of things about this promise. Number one is that there will be the son of Eve who would come and do what? He's going to overcome the evil one, right? He's going to somehow defeat the evil one. And as he's defeating the evil one, the serpent's son, is going to hurt or damage this son. Can you think of a place where this son was damaged? The cross, right? He was attacked in the heel. But what did the cross mean in the long run? Crushing the head of the serpent, right? The serpent attacks and only the heel is bruised. but the serpent, the son comes and bruises the head. It's a lethal blow. So it's good news because the son is going to overcome the serpent, it says. But second, right, there seems to be a division between those who belong to this son and those who belong to the serpent. There seems to be that there is going to be a division between two types of people, two types of families, two types of communities. Did you catch that? There would be two different types of communities from the beginning. And you actually start getting this, right? Think about this. Bible gives us the most vivid picture in this division right away with Genesis 4 with Cain and Abel. They're blood brothers. They belong to the same family. What happens between the two of them? One of them seems to be of the family of the son. The other one seems to be of the family of the evil one. Why? How can we say this? Think of Cain's attributes. What does the Cain do? So there is a murder there. What else?
He was angry with God. He didn't accept the sacrifice.
So he didn't. Yeah, angry, jealous. We can say envious and murderous. But another one. He's a liar, right? Yeah. He lies about it. What does Jesus say about Satan in John 8? He's a father of lies and he's a murderer from the beginning. So here you're seeing Cain in the image of the serpent, and Abel is in the image of God, right? So it already starts in Genesis 4. And you also see the gathering of those who belong to God in Genesis 4. Can someone read that for us? Genesis 4:25. Oh, did you hear that? Now that's a very important statement. At that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Here's a division. Here's a gathering, right? The people are divided by those who call upon the name of the Lord and those who do not. And you actually see it in Genesis 4 and then 5 it will come out. Right? So there is the gathering of those who call upon the name of the Lord. They are considered as those who belong to the household of God. And they're separated, set aside, divided from those who belong to the evil one. Now, this is from the beginning. Why am I saying this? Because in the New Testament, this distinction is the difference between the Church of Christ and the world. Right? Think of Romans 10, 9 through 13. Just pay attention to the wording that is used here. Okay, can someone read that for us?
Because if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved. For the scripture says, everyone who believes in him will not be put to shame. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord is Lord of all, bestowing his riches on all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved.
Did you hear that? Calling upon the name of the Lord. Right? That is the way of the community, the access into the community of salvation and life. Okay? This is the point that I guess I'm trying to drive. Depending on how you grew up in terms of your tradition, it is easy to think that the Church of Jesus is an addition that comes in the latter days in the New Testament. Did anybody grow up like that? the church came later. It's a new thing. There was difference in the Old Testament. There was no church.
Well, is it fair to say that Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church?
Right.
Obviously, we know the church started in the Old Testament.
Right.
But it's a different administration of the Gentiles.
Right. And we're going to get to it in a second with the church in the Old Testament and New Testament. There is an expansion. We'll get to it in a second. But at the very least, when we think of the origin of it, the church begins as soon as the fall happens. Because as soon as the fall happens, the promise of salvation is given. And God starts gathering his people. So if you're looking for a definition of a church, in general, what is it? Listen to this. So the church is God gathering and separating the ones, or a people, that belong to him from the world and bringing them together in his name in this life, flowing into the life to come. This is what you're getting when the creed talks about the Holy and Catholic Church, both the Nicene Creed and Apostles' Creed. It's the set apartness of the church, right? Set aside from all the world. They're gathered together. The point is that, at least the emphasis is, the church is the gathered ones. The called out ones. I want you to hear the plurality of it, and that it started as soon as Genesis 3:15, right? Now, of course, we make a distinction. You heard the term Catholic there, right? If you look at Westminster Confession of Faith, a good summary of what the Bible teaches. In Article 1, it says, Catholic or universal church, which is invisible, consists of the whole number of the elect that have been, are, or shall be gathered into one, under Christ the head thereof, and is the spouse, the body, and the fullness of him that filleth all in all. So when we say Catholic Church, when we're basically referring, if it's a lowercase c, we're referring to all those who have belonged, who belong now, and who will belong to Jesus and his church, right? I'm talking about those who are truly believers and elect in the Lord. So that's the invisible church, right? The visible church, however, refers to this, Westminster Confession of Faith 25, Article 2 here. The visible church, which is also Catholic or universal, under the gospel, not confined to one nation, as before under the law, consists of all those throughout the world that profess the true religion and of their children, and is the kingdom of the Lord Jesus Christ, the house and family of God, out of which there is no ordinary possibility of salvation. And we'll look at that statement later. But, you get those two terms, invisible church. It refers to all the people that are saved, that were saved, that are being saved, and that will be saved, right? And then you also have those who profess the name of Jesus, are visibly members of the church of Christ. So, looking at the origin of the church, then, remember the definition of the church for a second, right? The church from the beginning, right? It gets and gathers and separates the one that belonged to Christ from the world. And it started from the beginning, right? Just set that in your heart for a second. Let that help you, because I'm going to ask you this question. We're postmodern, individualistic, it's really easy to fall into it as well. Answer this question maybe. Is it ever okay for an individual to say, I am the church? So Caleb is saying we can say, I am part of the church. Everyone is scared. What should I say?
I have said it many times that I am the church,
Mhm.
but I mean it. I know that it's not just me. It's I am part of that body.
Right. Yeah. Veronica is saying that I've said that in the past, but I know that I actually am part of it, not it. Go ahead, Doug.
Church is part of it.
Yeah. So I'm trying to bring that to mind. Doug is saying church is plural, right? It doesn't say called out one, right? It called out ones, gathered ones, assembly. What makes the church is not an individual, but it is a unit together. I am trying to protect us from ever saying, you know what, I'm going to stay at home, I'm going to do church by myself. There is no explanation or justification for it. The word church does not support that. Are you guys with me? I'm trying to kind of protect us from the postmodern, post-Christian, individualistic, and hedonistic society of ours. It's so easy to pursue this, right? Go ahead, Caleb.
What do you do with a lot of people who start these home churches? There's no governing body. There's no ordain of them being sent out. They just feel called of God to start up a church with 5 or 10 families.
Right.
What do you do with that?
Yeah, Caleb was asking, what do you do with these, home churches, a couple families attend? There are a couple things about that. I guess it might be a good gathering, and then it can even turn into a wonderful community. I certainly get that. In my experience, setting aside just the biblical aspect of it, I found that those home churches turn out to be cultic in nature, mostly. When I say cultic, I'm saying that introverted, not really, checks and balances in any way. So on the one hand, just experientially, something is off. On the other hand, the way that the church is built, that we send out. It seems like in Romans 10, it talks about being sent to preach. Somebody must be sent by somebody or a governing body.
That's what I'm trying to say. Isn't there a danger of starting a church that is not being sent out by the mother church?
Yeah, of course. That it seems like Caleb is saying that isn't there a danger to just start a church? Of course, that's not the way of the scriptures, right? It seems that it goes from Jerusalem to all the nations. There seems to be an organic bond. Or, as you would say, a Presbyterian church government. But that's one, the origin of the church. The second, I want to mention the church in the Old Testament and New Testament, or the history of the church. I'm not talking about the church history here. I'm talking about the history of the church in the Bible. So, you see the same thing of separation and gathering and assembly in the Old Testament, right? Can someone read Deuteronomy 7, 6 through 8? Yeah, I love that passage for a lot of reasons. One of them is that the Lord loves you. Why? Not because there's something in you, because he loves you. That's the only love that can be justified, That's the only love that can survive. Any other love that says, I love you because of this, is going to be conditional. Because if you lose that thing, I'm not able to love you. So it's a good treatise on what love is. But here you're seeing God is, again, gathering his people. Now, at this point, of course, the church of Christ in the Old Testament becomes limited to a nation in the Old Testament, the nation of Israel. Now, are there exceptions to this, showing the great plan of God to be fulfilled? There are. Can you think of any Gentiles, people of other nations being saved, maybe? Nineveh. Rahab, somebody said? Abraham, before the Israel existed. Ruth, right? We have a lot of people actually coming to Jesus as Israel was supposed to become a light unto the nations. But the church becomes limited to a nation in the Old Testament as the plan of salvation is being disclosed in the Old Testament. And the church, when you see, again, we're trying to settle some furnitures here in your mental space. Not only that the church started in the Old Testament at Genesis 3:15, but the Old Testament, when you think of a church, the first thing that should come to your mind is Israel. This is the church of Christ, right? I want you to realize that. Or consider then Numbers 1 through 2. How important was this church and church membership? How much did God care about this? Can someone read that? Go ahead.
The Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of meeting on the first day of the second month, in the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, take a census of all the congregation of the people of Israel, by clans, by fathers' houses, according to the number of names, every male, head by head.
Yeah. Look, membership records, you might not like it, but was very important even in the Old Testament church. God wanted the names. Think of the whole Israel as the Catholic Church, that is lowercase c, the whole Church of Christ, one Church of Christ. And then think of the tribes as denominations. Think of the every family, particular families. These are large, clans we're talking about. Think of them as local churches, But God wanted the names. God wanted to register them. God wanted to record them. This begins in the Old Testament, right? It begins in the Old Testament. The church of Christ, the Israel, the people of God, it already starts. God sets them aside and then says, give me the names. Right? Think of Michael Horton says, C.S. Lewis says about this. But for a Christian, remember, every Israelite in the Old Testament who truly believed in God, I want you to say this to yourself and to your heart. Every Israelite in the church of Christ, the congregation of Christ, who truly believed in Christ and salvation in the Messiah, you can call them Christians. Right? Christians, truly Christians. And so listen to this from C.S. Lewis. But for a Christian, there are strictly speaking no chances, as secret master of ceremonies has been at work. Christ, who said to the disciples, ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you, can truly say to every group of Christian friends, you have not chosen one another, but I have chosen you for one another. So God builds and brings together his people. And we're not gathered around a hobby. We're not gathered around a particular interest. We are gathered by the one who calls. Right? You're not doing the gathering. He's the one who's doing the gathering. Okay? Now, this reality in Israel, of course, comes all the way, the church in the Old Testament comes all the way into the New Testament. What happens in the New Testament? What is so different in the New Testament? What different thing happens in the New Testament? As it has been promised, what happens? It has been promised to Abraham.
Your seed shall all nations be blessed.
So the expansion of the church, the very plan of God happens, right? The church that was more or less limited to one nation, it opens up to all nations, to include them in. In Matthew 28, that's one of the grand post-resurrection commands of the Lord. When he says this, I'll read it. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. Behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age. Jesus says that through my resurrection, through my work of redemption, a new era has begun. It's not that the church changes, it is that the church expands. It's not that the salvation now is a different way of salvation. It is that the salvation now goes to all people. Right? And that's why in the New Testament, if you read it carefully, you'll find that everything that is said of the people of Israel now can be said of the church and is said of the church. Right? Think 1 Peter 2, 9 through 10. Can someone read that for us?
You are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you have not received mercy, but now you have received mercy.
What are those terms? Where are they used before?
Israel.
Remember in Exodus, especially 19, God says those things to actually things of the people of Israel. And then now, Peter comes and uses the same terms for the Gentile church mostly. We know that it's a Gentile church. Why? Look what the last statement, right? What does it say? Once you were not a people, now you are a people, right? God's people. Once you had not received mercy, you were away from all things of mercy. Now you received mercy. So the church now, including the Gentiles, so Jewish converts or Jewish believers who believe in the Messiah, coupled with the Gentile believers who believe in the Messiah, now they make up of the church, which is also called the Israel of God in the New Testament. Right? Think of Galatians 6:16. It says, at the end of his letter, Paul says, as for all who walk by this rule, peace and mercy be upon them and upon the Israel of God. Referring to the church, which was made up of both Jews and Gentiles. You see, again, I'm trying to connect some dots here. The origin of the church, knowing 3:15, God separating his people, right? And then the history of the church more or less was limited to the people of Israel, and then it expands, and everything that was said of the people of Israel now can be said of the church today, and the church that is now made up of Jews and Gentiles together. When I say Jews, I'm talking about Jews that believe in the salvation through the Messiah, Jesus himself, acknowledge him. And everything, again, that is an attribute, that is an explanation, definition that God said of the people of Israel is true of us. Right? And I love this from Michael Horton when he says, a church is not a group of friends you picked, it's a group of brothers and sisters God has picked for you. It'll be good to remember that as individuals, wouldn't it? We're in that grand plan together. Now, I want to get to this. Membership in the church. Is that important? Does it matter? Well, I'm going to make the bold claim. It's not only important, it's not only serious, it's not only, it will be good that you must do it. You are commanded to do it. Do you see the difference? It's not only a good thing that if I wanted and desired, I'll do it. No. You are actually called and commanded by the Lord to do it. It's the practice of the church. Think of this in Acts 2, 37 through 41. This is right after the first sermon of the new church after the resurrection of Christ, after the ascension of Christ. Peter just preached the sermon, and then people are coming to faith. Can someone read that longer section for us? Who is willing? Not shy.
37 through 41.
Yes.
Now when they heard that this, they were cut to the heart, and said to Peter and the rest of the apostles, brothers, what shall we do? And Peter said to them, repent, be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ, for the forgiveness of your sins, and you will receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. For the promise is for you and for your children, for all who are far off, everyone whom the Lord our God calls to himself. And with many other words he bore witness, and continued to exhort them, saying, save yourselves from this crooked generation. So those who received this word were baptized, and there were added that day about 3,000 souls.
So some of them heard the word and received it and repented it, and they were added. They were added to what? So they were added to the number of specific, specific number that resided in the church, and 3,000 souls were added to it. Everything was clear and specific, and they were attached to it as well. Here's the point that I'm going to make. In Westminster Confession of Faith 25:2, you just read that outside the church there is no ordinary possibility of salvation. You heard that? Did that irk you a little bit? Did you feel a little weird about it? I mean, you were Protestants, right? You're right if I start feeling it. Yeah, so the church saves me? You start feeling it. No, the point is more, kind of important that the Catholic Church used this. The church used it, as far as I know, it goes all the way back to 2nd century, that word. There is no ordinary possibility of salvation. It doesn't say that salvation happens only by the church or only in the church. In fact, the word ordinary is used, like you're probably thinking right now, what if in Iran somebody comes to faith and there is no church? What are they going to do? But that doesn't seem like an ordinary situation to me. But listen to this. If you are here in the United States right now, there is a church at every corner. If you come to know Jesus and love Jesus, one of the most organic, one of the most natural thing that a believer does is this. Where is my people? Where are they? It's not that, man, this is my perspective now. No, the most organic thing that you do is, where are they? Remember, what is the church? Gathered ones together. The first thing that you do is, where are they? I want to be gathered with them. That's the desire. Right? That's why there's a specific number. That's why they're added to the church right away. And look what happens after they're added to the church. Acts 2:42, 47. Let me just read briefly here. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. I'll stop there. What is the first thing that these people do? They're involved in the regular church life, it seems. Think about this. The first one is they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. What does that mean? What is the apostles' teaching? Yeah. Was there a New Testament then? Not yet, right? So the apostles preached directly. So what were they doing? They devoted themselves to the preaching by the apostles, or people appointed by the apostles. So the first thing that they do, these people who become Christians, they want to hear the word preached in a regular church setting. What is the second thing? Look. Fellowship, it says. What is fellowship? That is the word koinonia. I love the way that we try to communion, fellowship, one anothering, right? It seems like this deep communion happens right away within church life. Or consider this, breaking of bread. What is that referring to? Is that the monthly fellowship meal? No. What is it? The Lord's Supper, right? Again, within a church setting, breaking of bread. And lastly, you see that prayers. What does that refer to? Talking to God. But did you know that it's actually more? Prayer in the New Testament, especially in the book of Acts, refers to whole worship service. It says that they went to the temple to pray. It's not just referring to the prayer, but it's talking about more than that. So are you guys seeing this with me? These people come to faith for the first time, believe in the Lord. What do? Where are my people? And then when they go and find their people, what do? They're involved in the regular gathering of a church life. Go ahead, Caleb.
Well, I'm trying to understand it. This is obviously an organic, supernatural move of God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when was the first time that the actual formal membership, you putting the name on the roll, where did this begin?
Numbers 1, we just read it, right?
But do you believe that what I'm saying in the New Testament church?
Yeah, I'm going to mention that in a second when we get to the end of this section here in Romans chapter 16. Just in a second, we'll get to the names part. Go ahead.
When we went to the temple, wasn't there Jewish leaders that were still running the temple, practicing worship, or was it worshiping?
Right. So it talks about when they went to the temple to pray, this is the time of transition, but also time of discussion with them. So every time they go to a synagogue or a temple situation, there's always a discussion and kind of a challenge the authority at the time. But the reason why they go is to get involved in the temple worship, even in this transition, right? But here's I'm not going to read the J.C. Ryle quote. You should read it. It's wonderful. It's why sheep want to be together. It's not just a command of the Lord. It's the desire of the sheep. It says that sheep want to be together organically. The only animal, he says, that wants to be in a flock situation and they love it is the sheep, he says. It's so good. And then he mentions this, and we don't have to read it, but he says, we want to be with the sheep of Christ because the only people that could understand the secret feelings of ours are those same people who have the same secret feelings. Right. Go ahead, brother.
Confession must say that the common and ordinary means of grace,
Right, right,
which are preaching, prayer,
Right.
and sacraments,
right,
are found in church alone.
right, right.
Sola gratia.
Yes. And I'm going to have another topic here. I didn't write it there. How to choose a church, which will include those things in a second. How do we choose a church? Our brother is mentioning the ordinary means of grace, that is found in the church. That those are the word, the sacraments, and the prayer. But continuing here, Caleb's question, when did the names, and the stuff started? It seems to me that it started right away. Right away. It's not like, nobody knew who was the member. Nobody was aware who was received into membership. Nobody knew who was welcome into the church. Look, I tell people this. Listen to it carefully. Romans 16, 1 and 2. If someone can read this for me. Very short.
I commend to you our sister Phoebe, a servant of the church at Century, that you may welcome her in the Lord in a way worthy of the saints, and help her in whatever she may need from you, for she has been a patron of many and of myself as well.
Yeah, so this is the first letter of transfer in the New Testament. You find? Let's do a kind of an illustration with this. The church, the first Orthodox Presbyterian church in Cancria, sends a member to the Rome Presbyterian Church in Rome. And the way to send a member to the other church is this. Here is Phoebe. Here's the letter of transfer. She's actually a member in good standing, so please receive her into membership. How did they keep accountability at the time? This way. If you don't know, we still do this. If someone is coming to us from another church, we need to get a letter of standing or a letter of transfer, right? So the names, the numbers were a big deal to the church because they were a big deal to God. Why? And get this, you might not know this, but also we're settling some things here. You've heard, both in the Old Testament and New Testament, this idea of book of life, right? In the book of life, what is written? The names of those who are saved and who belong to Jesus. Think of that as the upper register heavenly book. What is the corresponding book on earth that is imperfect, but it is similar to book of life? Believe it or not, the church membership records. Are they imperfect? Yes. But are they corresponding to the book of life? Of course they do. Of course they do. So I hope you're seeing with me that the reality of the church membership is not an invention of the 21st century because we want to keep people on the rolls. We want names and numbers. But it goes back to the scriptures all the way to the beginning with names. Right? All the way. Go ahead.
My personal opinion, I could be wrong on this, the importance of church membership is for church discipline. If a person is a member of a church,
Right.
they can live however they want to live. And
Right.
There's no accountability.
Mm-hmm.
You can do whatever you want.
Right.
And you can jump to one church, to another church,
Right.
to another church, to another church.
Sure. Right, right.
put the name on it with them. Because they don't want that accountability.
Right. So Caleb is mentioning that church discipline is one of the main reasons for church membership. It's certainly one of the big reasons of it. It's part of it, I think. It's not all of it, but it's part of it. And our last How to Choose a Church gets to that. On what basis do you actually go to a church or choose a church? But here, let me, I'm going to keep pushing this. We need to finish it. We really do. Here's the nature of the church. So what is within the church? Okay, what should the church be like? And why would it matter? Like we said that it's a command, you're seeing it, and it's a practice both in the Old and New Testament, you all see it. But practically, why? 1 Corinthians 12 through 26. Read it yourself sometime. Maybe this afternoon. It's a good time to spend the Lord's Day reading the Scriptures. Paul likens the church of Christ to a body with members. Think of the head as Jesus himself, the Lord. And then you have all the others, the fingers, some members, the nose, the eyes, the chin, the foot, the toes. They all have, particular function within the body. That's at least the picture that Paul gives us. But what you are getting is that in order for the body to thrive, that body members must be together. And in order for the individual members to thrive, they need to be attached to the body. I give this example, and I think it's telling. Imagine that you suddenly realize today, you know what, I want my arm to thrive and be free. I'm going to amputate it. He's going to do whatever he wants. What will happen if you amputate your arm? It will wither and die. Would it function well? It wouldn't. Paul is saying that, do you want to function well? Be attached to the body. See, in the body of Christ, you can actually reach your full potential as a Christian. That's the point. You can function well and harmoniously as a person individually in the body. And the body will function better because of you. Do you see that connection here? And think of this, John Calvin. Can someone read that for us? He wrote this about the church. Somebody?
Let us learn, even from the simple title, Mother, how useful, indeed how necessary it is that we should know the church. For there is no way to enter life unless this mother conceives us in her womb, gives us birth, nourishes us at her breast, and lastly, unless she keeps us under her care and guidance until, putting off mortal flesh, we become like angels. Our weakness does not allow us to be dismissed from her school until we have been pupils all our lives. Furthermore, away from her bosom, one cannot hope for any forgiveness of sins or any salvation.
Do you hear again with Calvin? No ordinary possibility of salvation unless you're in the church. The point is ordinary again, right? We need the church until we get to glory. That's the point. Right? I love this from J.I. Packer. Just to stir our hearts, it says, we should not think of our fellowship with other Christians as a spiritual luxury, an optional addition to the exercises of private devotion. Fellowship is one of the great words of the New Testament. It denotes something that is vital to a Christian's spiritual health and central to the church's true life. The church will flourish and Christians will be strong only when there is fellowship. We should recognize, rather, that such fellowship is a spiritual necessity, for God has made us in such a way that our fellowship with himself, listen to this, how profound this is. God has made us in such a way that our fellowship with himself is fed by our fellowship with fellow Christians and requires to be so fed constantly for its own deepening and enrichment. That's profound. See, we need the church. Individually, for us to thrive, we need to be part of the church. Not only it's a command and a call from the Lord, but practically it's the best case scenario. Do you agree? Now, I said that I we'll just mention this briefly. Consider this part. And most of you guys are members here anyway, but I want to give you a little argument for how to choose a church. How do you choose a church? I'm going to give you 3 things to look at, and then I'm going to add one more to it. The first 3, they are generally known as the 3 marks of a true church. And now I want to add one to that. I think if it's not essential, if it's not paramount, I certainly think that it's a necessity for a good church. So number 1, how to choose a church. This is last page. Number 1, let's say you go into a church. What do you want to see as soon as you go into a church? You need to see the Bible taken seriously. As soon as you go in, you should be able to say that, man, the Bible seems to be in the life of this church. It has a large place. You should sense it right away, right? The authority of the Bible is kind of pushed upon your face constantly, right? And you're not only throughout the worship service, but the preaching you're hearing about Jesus, centered around Christ and his cross, it should come to you. It should cover you, right? That as soon as you are into a church service, you should remember that, okay, these people are taking the Bible, the Word of God, seriously. You should be able to say that. That's number 1, the Word. Number 2 is the sacraments. When you go to a church, you should be, when we say sacraments, we're talking about, by the way, just if you want to know it, a sacrament is a picture of the gospel. So the gospel is what you hear, right? The sacrament is what you see through your eyes. That's a picture given to you. God is so merciful that he even gives us visible things to see. So here's the sacraments, the Lord's Supper and baptism. When you are part of a church, if it's a good, true, a faithful church, you should be able to see that they're taking the sacraments seriously and administering them regularly. If you end up at a church when there's a kiddie pool and then everyone is jumping for baptism, it's time to leave, right? There should be some reverence and regular administration. And it should not be, everyone go back home and take the Lord's Supper by yourselves. Or everyone, just go to one corner and take the Lord's Supper. No, you should see the Lord's Supper, reverence for it, and organization within it. There should be regularity and reverence and good administration for it. Right? Now, number 3, Caleb mentioned this. If you're going to a church, they should be taking sin seriously. That's church discipline. So words, sacraments. Number 3 is church discipline. They should be taking the sin seriously. If someone has committed a sin, there should be shepherding, and there should be, helping, and they should be striving to bring the person back. But the sin should never be, swept under the rug, right? Why is that? Number 1, you're protecting the one who committed. You always want to bring them back. That's the goal, to restore. Number 2, you're protecting the church from the sin. If somebody is, let's say, living with their girlfriend, right? And you know it, the church knows it, nobody cares for it, what will happen organically? Another couple from the church says, well, it seems like that's an okay thing to do. We'll do it as well. So everyone kind of stirred to even sin further. This is what you find in 1 Corinthians 5, by the way, right? The church was not doing anything because there was a horrifying sin among the people of God. And Paul says, and you are arrogant, he says to them. You're not doing anything about this sin. So church discipline matters to protect those who sin and the community of God. And lastly, this is the one that I added. Is there a vibrant fellowship and community? What do I mean by that? I'm not talking about the church having 27 ministries. I'm not talking about there are a lot of things to do. I'm talking about this. There is a warmth of the gospel within the community. The church is not a frozen chosen, right? You hear that in our Reformed circles? No. We who are saved by the grace of God should give the vibe of that warmth of the gospel. The very love that we preach about and hear about should actually live and dwell within the vicinity of our life, right? So you need to feel that within the church, don't you think? So I added that because in the scriptures, this one anothering is such an important topic, and it's used multiple times. If it's not paramount and essential, I would certainly say it's a necessity for the church. Okay, I'll stop here. Any thoughts? Any rebuttals? I don't like church membership. I like to be free. Anyone?
Well, quickly.
Go ahead.
I've known Bible studies who have the communion.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
So the Lord's Supper can only be administered by someone who has the authority to fence and give the Lord's Supper. Unless it is a cold service that is, led by an elder, and it's called by the session and attended by an elder, I don't think that you can have the Lord's Supper by yourself individually.
This man was a judge, and he was also a youth pastor, and he said, I'm ordained of God to do this. So basically, he took it upon himself to, give communion to the Bible
Right.
study. And I was like, I didn't agree with it.
Right.
He felt it was okay.
Right. So look, we have people in our church that are homebound. We sometimes go and have a service there, but in order to even have that service, we first call it from the session. At a session meeting, we say we're going to have a worship service here at this point and administer the sacrament. And then we have an elder or two that comes because we need accountability even doing that. Certainly it is the leadership's call as a session to administer the sacrament and the minister's role to administer it, not even the elder in the OPC, if you're in the OPC. Yeah. Go ahead.
What do you say to people who are looking for a church and can't find one?
Oh man, that's such a good question. Such a good question. If someone tells me that, I'm not able to find it, I like to dig deeper a little bit more. Man, there is no lack of churches around. Certainly. But you can find a Bible-believing church. If you want to worship Jesus, you're going to be able to find it. I like to dig deeper, because mostly when people say that I'm not able to find a good church, on the one hand, it's easy to detect right away that they are seeking something that would fit their desires and preferences. We live in a world of preferences. I have 2,000 channels, right? If I don't like one, I go to the other one. So a lot of preferences. So I'll dig deeper a little bit to understand if that's the case. If not, I certainly say, hey, why don't you come? I'll go with you. If this is someone that you love and you want them to thrive, I'll go with you. And if they don't want to come to your church, I'll go with you someplace else. I want you to be settled in a Bible-believing church. I think we can do it. That's not a big sacrifice to make. Yeah. Go ahead,
Like what
Sam.
the confession says about even like the purest church is still a mix of truth and error.
Yes, every church has its issues. Except ours, of course, right? I'm joking. But yes, every church and every community, until glory, it's going to be mixed. Even the confession says it, right? What is that, Article 3? I think that's what it is, Article 3. Yeah. I think I'll stop here. Thank you so much, guys. Let me know if you have any questions after the service, but sorry for going this long, but we had to finish it. Thank you.